Soji chunala e chanju badu dani chazu chi dagi jinzo jibe tsonam ji dola pinche sanje drupa shu. Soji chunala e chanju badu dani chazu chi dagi jinzo jibe tsonam ji dola pinche sanje drupa shu. Soji chunala e chanju badu dani chazu chi dagi jinzo jibe tsonam chi dola pinche sanje drupa shu. Dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji dunye dan dunye ge judan tewa juji dunye mebe dewa damba dan mindewa juji chadon nidan dewe tonyan chimbala nebar juji Tanje dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji dunye dan dunye ge judan tewa juji dunye mebe dewa damba dan mindewa juji nyerin chadan nidan dewe tanyan chimbala nebar juji dewa dan dewe judan denpa juji dunye dan dunye ge judan tewa juji dunye mebe dewa tamba dan mindewa juji nyerin chadan nidan dewe tanyan chimbala nebar juji.
वो दूसरे लड़की चल गया है क्योंकि उनको इसके बोला एम्प्टीनेस के बारे में बाद में सुना बोला ना लेकिन आज इस तरह सिर्फ 2 श्लोक है वो खत्म हो जाएंगे फिर जाएंगे ना ठीक है या 당한저 뒤로 당한저 다리 디 로저 치지마이 디마 차체 아니가서 디날도도도도 라 안딩알로도 뭐가서 저더린도 허르다 담보 저트니 시라마제 디날로 카린 도도 차상치더라 아니 저런서 저에나 되지라 가서나서 때 군다 르르도 체바 지 사도라 그래 저러나 다리만 가서 때 센팅네바 삼다 저라
So since we have only about 2 verses left in the 8 verses of training of mind, we'll finish that first. And then after that, we will look at the commentary, Key to the Middle Way, by His Holiness. And in our discussions about the Key to the Middle Way, maybe before we make time for questions and so forth, we'll try to cover the essential points in the commentary first. And after that, we'll make some time for questions. Now, yesterday we had like a playful discussion. Now today it's time to become a little bit more serious now.
세상디 대디 빼고 다시나 단다 딘질에 있는 친구들 땅에라 디 코데오체 아니 야포도라 아니 지난게 근디 거라 공부데 디르다 당한조 빼 중심부 좀 엄마도 들로는 빼대 마음 투보여래 아니 빼 깔래 가보여라 안테바 섭시 제보여래 야포다니 네데다 와다 디즈 마라다 지 나데네 디타네 디나 빼 야포도 ndagondi kasangela nge chasangilo ndagonya tanda shurido chikalo dodon seemba ti chasangda nga zo tari tsagi mara tinde inza ani dine kecha chunzala malaya itadido seemba.
So this commentary by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Key to the Middle Way, the intent and the purpose of this text is to distill or to offer a comprehensive commentary on the essential points that are found in the greater treatises, because I think this might be really, really helpful, because not all of us have the time and the inclination to study the greater treatises, and such in this His Holiness the Dalai Lama has distilled almost all of the essential points about the Madhyamika philosophy. So I hope this will be helpful. And I read this before to prepare, and I read it again yesterday. So even when we look at this comprehensive commentary, it's quite extensive in its nature, and we only have a day. So I will try to cover the most essential and most important points of the commentary.
So, 당한저 실로카 dimbadir더라 지지만의 실로카 제비나레다 dimba디체 아니 다 자wad나 가르선스나 너나 ngö다 주바이스 펜데 만남 콜럼버스 마이 너다 등해가 상외 달라 렘버쇼 송다 다딘데 인디글라다 가르스난 가르간조 단다 가나마 시샤주디 참만 도스 두바이나 아니 가르초라나 소소 ngö스이나레 아니 ngö스 마인가야 찍게 슈글라로라나 푸글다 이거바 메시지들아 ngö다 주바이 아니 펜바다 대화 아니 된점 다딜라지 가르여와 있는 소소지 파이젠뱅이 내가 가르쳐와 있는 듯참마 아니 펜데 만나 콜람벨다 가족이 단다 가서 만남라고 해야 돼 제상한테 티지선지 것은 마진 로아를 숨제단지랑게 마체 많이 지장요 말해라더라 다트나게 카투카들 파마 소소라 가르야 버체 마제도 요 지용 거잖아 시와이나 마디까지 전부 임비찬으라 딘데치 아니 딘데위 아니 디에 수수기 지기 칼로라 가랑사 제다바 많이 마 심장 탐지 막 건라디가 참말 나오라 그는 무스 딘데 펜바다 대화도 아니 마이 너다 동해 그 딘데 아니 마진 로르 심장 탐지라 동해 유주디 아니 너바다 동해다 딘데 가르여 바이나 디스 참마 동해 건스라 동해 타다디 아니 상외 다라래 바쇼스 아니 오나 지게 딘데 지랑 아주 라페게 카투 파기게 동해데 라페게 칠래한다 아주게 되어도 라페 엔데테요 만다 잘로이 소나 땅와이나레 간지 아니 딘데 쇠라 오 딘데 아니 치고레 송드라.
So now verse number 7. In brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. Now herein it talks about the practice of giving and taking. In a sense, it is touching upon the process of equalizing the self and exchanging the self for others. So in brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers, to all sentient beings. So we talked extensively about how it is important to recognize all sentient beings as our mothers from a Buddhist perspective in order to generate the awakening mind of bodhicitta, which is the door through which one enters the Mahayana path. And now, irrespective of the particular instances wherein we as individuals might not have the best relations sometimes with our mothers, but generally it is important to cultivate such a recognition as all sentient beings as having been our mothers. And in brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mother sentient beings and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. Now herein, even though we might not be able to physically take upon ourselves all their hurt and suffering, but through the practice of equalizing the self and exchanging the self for others, we can visualize in our meditation to cultivate such an attitude, and through that visualization take upon all the hurt and all the suffering that sentient beings undergo.
다 실로가 제바딜라 칼레드스나 대타 건장 취지지 있으라 당저 강마 쉬셔지 삼아라라 또베 트메 마바힌스 쳔남 주마 셰비르 셰미 치웨 칭와 리터 쇼스레다 다든레디가 대타 건장 이제 당저 가레니 취 가레 치와 있는 잠당서 지딘 취지게 안다 도라 디만도와 치고레송라 세상 안에 또베 트메 마바이 당저 지딘 취지게 트마다 다 소소 된데 나도도 된데 트마 트메 바발라니 트메 고발레 마바발라디 트메 망고와 치어라 아니 최나 지말 시제네 최나 가서 딱 가장 가서 동반이 걸 망부지 시에들에 최나 봐 오네기 봤다 오데가 아니 주만하시 트파 로로베 바 따샤지 맹고이네 술라 아니 덴버투바지 메바시라 이네 다나도 마타 마치 비잖아 타니데 요르 디기 가지고 자치게 나샤 되게 요르 자와니네야 메바다 네 레진데다 정 하시게 나샤 메바든데레라네 마레스 이네야 징가주게 덴버투바디 요르라네 요마르티 가지고 덴버투바디 파 드로타샤주 라 아니 징가주 Dolmala digala danzong so tuba ten sa magic le to tina ten de ngaz dawo thong da ngoi ne ngone ngaz thu de ta kana thong da ine thong de ba ta kana me ba sila demba tuba yo me ba ra tinde yo de ani ngaz jime gi tuba na se shebi an tinde gi le di gi yes tinde lo de chen ani sheme la digala de la cha sen de shemba denzen me ba ra sheme is de la shemba me ba ta ani tinde shin 셴바들이 칭와는 담발로라 파 가서 단데 디는 쳬도 단제기 나로라 딘데위 칭와 나로래 파 드로워 쇼라 디갈라다 딘데 단제다 덴제다 로로파 남도 마부 지어라 두줄레 파 테워 쇼스.
So, moving on, the last verse. I will learn to keep all these practices untainted by thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns. So, as we discussed before, it is important that our spiritual practice should not be influenced, should not be influenced, and should not come from from a concern about worldly things such as gain, loss, fame, and so forth. So, this is very, very important. That when we say that we want to cultivate a spiritual practice, it is not to seek validation, not to seek fame, not to seek gain for ourselves. So this is what we mean by the 8 worldly concerns. And now moving on, may I recognize all things as like illusions and without attachment gain freedom from bondage. So may I recognize as all things as like illusions touches upon emptiness now. We discussed extensively before how things do not exist the way they appear to us. When we look at the manner in which things appear to us, they appear as they have some true existence, intrinsic existence, inherent nature. But this is not the case at all. So similar to a magician's illusions, even though they appear to be true and real, things are also like illusions. Things, even if they appear to be truly established, they do not have any inherent or any intrinsic existence to them at all. Now, with that being said, it is also important to remember our discussions about when we refute the true existence of things, we are not refuting the functionality of things. Within the lack of inherent existence, we posit the functionality of things in the conventional existence of things as mere appearances, as mere terms. But in and of themselves, things do not have any kind of inherent existence. So as such, they are not truly established, like a magician's illusions. And the last line, without attachment, gain free from bondage. Bondage herein refers to samsaric existence. Now, attachment herein could refer to grasping, conception. So, may I recognize all things as like illusions and without any grasping at true existence, without any grasping at an inherent self, without any conception of true existence, without any conception of an inherent self, gain freedom, gain liberation from samsara.
당아도 디차와시라 아니 단다디 먼저 우메 데미 시샤와주소 라드라 안 공서 정보 전부 쪽에서 손주르다 온디 난 단다 딘zel라 이천한절 표요레 아니 지난서 집차웠다서나 딜러라.
So now we will look at the commentary by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Key to the Middle Way, and I have sent the English translation of this text in the group, WhatsApp group, and you can study this afterwards on your own.
그래서 아니 당한서 단다 디는도라 있는도인데 단들로 했더니 도도 맛이 참만 더 두고 말이라 아니 디나로로 지 고 대오도 주지다 들라나 단들다 shodan tu chiba inji mare. Ta ina kemendura tata jitura kenanda ma. Ani nelara tela sa dame ba tongba nyeji se tengen ba la so tongba shibi so tongju di koden nye gudes ta nga tongba ni le digele ani dige tongju ge ani koden da ko ko re la dra ta dinde ipena ga gasha ngonje ro sungda dinde ani jese shiwa na la yese shiwa le kar susena tabi ngola maripa de ngome zamayin la sho diga ra na tambu ga ge demba mepa togo bala ale tambu demba tubu tuse chi ngosi ra demba tubu tuse chi ngosi ne ani de mindula an demba mepa togo ma to tambu ale demba tubu tuse kora ha ma kona demba meba yin la di kala de nge tu ma re so ji tedra tabi ngola la de ngazo tak taji chinira dende ngola ani soso gita chidang ga re bala tuba de la ko da kanji dende tabi ngola maripa de ngomen jama ila di dende ngopo de la ngazo chi koto da ta chi tuse ji ngo masin para de yo mare la sing mare ha ko khabur de ngomi zentu mare to tu mare sla da.
So then now we wouldn't be able to cover everything in the commentary, so as such I have sort of picked a few of the essential points in the commentary, and we will look at these. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama advises first that when we begin to contemplate on selflessness, emptiness of the self, it is important first to understand what exactly is this emptiness first. So herein, when we look at what exactly is this emptiness, what exactly is the self empty of, then we are recognizing and identifying the object of negation in the analysis of emptiness of the self. Now, herein, we should, His Holiness the Dalai Lama advises us to look at Shantideva's, the Master Shantideva's instruction about the importance of correctly identifying the object of negation in the analysis of emptiness. So Shantideva says, without contacting the phenomena that is imputed, then it is impossible to begin to negate it. So, without contacting the entity that is imputed, it is impossible to negate it. It is impossible to correctly negate it. So herein, when Shantideva says, without contacting the imputed phenomena, without contacting the phenomena that we have superimposed, conceptually superimposed, then it is impossible to understand what exactly must be negated. Now, herein, when we use terms such as object of negation, in other words, it is advising us, it is instructing us to correctly identify the extent of our conception of true existence.
Pena di nalo lama ta gaja tubi de tambo phaji kane ani khande yim ta yusu do ani khangi tonas khande stongo la na pena gaja de la ani thokba da re bang zo thokla di ani de ka sha ja re bala na tu thore tabu jane se de tombe se jachen tongba zero tabu tangas de mat de mare la da tabu tangas yang gaja zujenji is tombi is namke tongba sewa tabu shi me mare es la ra ta ona khande jire sana gaja de ngo ni ji is tuba shi jane so so ngo rangun su tuba tongba ale de yo mara me ba ji tsa ale tambo lo ngo su tune jane es de tongba tans ra de yang gaja khari shi sewa khari yo ba ji ani pa shi ba me ba su ju de ne ma in ken la ra pena de karsha din ya ba ko da pena sa khasang ki su tu su na che so yo ba se tering ki tu su na che me chom de sa sa je na chil tombo tabu shi me ba de mar de jila sha go mar yes.
So now in the process of identifying the object of negation, it is important when we look at a term such as emptiness, as a term such as negating, then it is important to understand herein negation or emptiness does not refer to some sort of tangible negation, tangible extermination. For example, It's not something that is it's not something that emptiness or negation herein does not refer to intangibility itself. This does not refer to intangibility itself. One. Two, it is also, when we use terms such as emptiness and negation, it is also not the emptiness of space itself. For example, when we have physical matter which occupies space, and when this physical matter is taken out, then there is an empty space. That's not the emptiness that we are talking about. This is important to understand. Now, if we are to correctly understand emptiness, first we must recognize, for the sake of our argument, we must posit an essentially existent thing or essentially existent self first. And now, when we look at this negation of the essentially existent self or the essentially existent thing, through the process of negating, it is not the case that this essentially existent self existed before, and through the process of negation, it doesn't continue to exist afterwards. So herein we use this example. For example, if there is a forest, then there is the forest. The forest exists before. But if a fire ravages the forest, then all the trees are burned down. There is no forest anymore. The forest is empty now. That's not the kind of emptiness. That's not the manner in which the process of negation works. The process of negation works with regards to a conception. So that's just a conception. The essentially existent self didn't exist before the process of negation, and it doesn't continue to exist after the process of negation.
아니 에너지 가르송들나 통마 메반네 수요 마뉴아 라 텐데 지나 덴버투발에 자와니 잠니가라 요 마뉴아 추시다깔 요 마뉴아 지차고 레스라 요 마뉴아티 아니 계시 요나 덴데지요 오래라죠 덴데지츠 무슨비 가니 아니 간저 파 메바 또투 라 제가 간저 단다 요 마뉴아지 요르는 일로야 트네 아니 디간 아니 간저 니링 차나 단전 덴지 참 디갈레 라 메조기 시질에 간저기 트네 디갈랑 간저 투디니 로지레다 제단는다 토마 메바네 요 마뉴이 가자 똥바니 당스라 다 디레스 디갈라나 아니 가샤 똥루장 똥루드 덴데 칸데스나 조지티네 메토 타부스 메토 타부 멤파라사 계정 간저 조지티네 메토르 샤야 메토디 키르나 디 똥슬레지라 덴데 마이게 덴데 이나 아니 코딩갈지 요뉴요라 라 조지티네 간저 메토르 샤와이나 덴데 조지기팅이 메토 샤주디 조지티레 요 뇽바지 차로라 라 요 뇽네 아니 시스 메바지 디기 탄다 똥바니라 디갈라 자와니니 요코라 마뉴아지레 라보라 멤버라스 아니 조지티네 메토다 베샨 디파 레와 나세 마임바라 가시 티니 스타파 가사기 시데니 라오라 가시 용오 모용을 파기 아니 메피 텐다스 파기 가시기 유딜라 아니 파기 응을슬라 메피 텐레 메토 녜라치 유 안티치 키도와다 파유샤와다 장마스와다 딘데기 된다 말에 에스라 디네지 스 강기 동주 가자암 다 가잘라나야 디도스라 강 바똥세기 먼저 파 가고세 가자주라 가자암 다기 투다 가잘라나디게 다기 투치 가잘라나 말라나 다드 투베 투치를 샤오라 덴데위 투치 망해버 먼저 다드 투베 파 까고라나 온 다드 투발네 칸데지요레 계시 요바이네 칸데지요라나 세지 샤오라스라 투치 망해버 딘 데메지 인데레 마이스네 아니 데메지 째양 메버 안네 똥참 라 똥창 세 메이 똥상 똥베 저데 때네메 덴데지다 지 차자서지면은 데밀레 체종사도 지메와이나 아니 인간도 똥창 꾸드니로 지차게 레스라 인지민지기 지시템 담바투나 투비 투세지파 ngosune 아니 데바메발란 다 도도딜라워 덴데지 고레스.
So now, moving further along the discussion, now we're still talking about correctly identifying the object of negation. And then His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that this essentially existent self, the conception of this, now rather than treating it as a conception at this point, try to think about it in this manner, that this essentially existent self that we misconceive to exist didn't exist from beginningless time. It never existed, actually. It's something that we superimpose conceptually onto the collection of aggregates. And as such, it was never existent, this essentially existent self. Now, when we say that, try to think about it in this manner, that if we place a flower on a table, then the flower exists on the table. Now, when we take the flower away from the table, then we say the table is empty. Now, the negation of the essentially existent self is not similar to this. It never existed from the start. It's something we superimpose. It's something that we created conceptually. It never existed. So this is important to understand. Now, herein, when we are looking at this, we are trying to identify the object of negation exactly. More particularly, whether we use the term object of negation, in a sense, we are looking at the true extent of that true extent of the conception of true existence. So, if we are not able to correctly identify the extent of this conception of true existence, then we wouldn't really be able to posit effectively what exists and what does not exist.
Tadi odamda then the color na ya lo nyamba ngana zata ngchi denzen da dangzen da du yorwa lo nyamba mambu shi isa tangs chungden ta tinde lo dangzen da denzen da chungden de chibela ra chungden nam so rose chiba denzen te so yonwa yimbe tende chesang ngzu jige demba tuban zen de tende dangzen da denzen de la ani tele tembe ani lo ropa mambu chile ngrestra yonwa yimbe denzen chi is maripa tes tangzo denzen maripa shura maripa tes maripa te mena kesi nganzo maripa denzen danzen la sopa tende lo maripa te meba ina chadang so se chesa meba se tetar imbes chesang tende wi ani nganzo chi lo maripa te papa wa da danzen de denzen la sopa tende lo lopa te papa wa ina ani chadang ge chesa ge shi ani tende ka denzen chi is maripa te mena chadang so chesa meba tetarata chadang chesa yo mares la
and I forgot to translate a bit before. So when we are talking about correctly identifying the object of negation, as we talk about first understanding that this essentially existent self is but just a conception. From beginningless time, this never existed, as opposed to the example of a flower existing flower on the table existing when it's placed there, and when you remove it, it doesn't no longer exist. As such, the table is empty. It's not similar to that. It's non-existent. Now, with regards to our own analysis of emptiness, it is important to understand it in this manner, that on the basis of negation, this self never existed. This object of negation, we might have thing in this manner that we are negating an object which exists somewhere on the basis of negation itself. But that's not the case at all. On the basis of negation, this object never existed, this object of negation. Do we understand? On the basis of negation, what's the basis of negation? Let's say that when we say that the table is empty of true existence, what's the basis of negation?
It does not exist in its own way.
That's the object. That's
The basic negation is this.
Object of negation means what exactly is being negated, right?
Yeah.
So what's being negated is the true existence of table. So then what's the basis of negation? Gakshi muizingura khunzayang gakchang basing.
다 타고 차다 근데 타
Gotsig table la peshana yara.
네
The object of negation is the true existence of the thing.
Yes, but what's the basis of negation?
The base of negation is to cancel out everything what it's not. Or am I misunderstanding?
Basis means?
The base itself.
Yes.
What it depends on.
Yes. So a table appears.
Yeah.
The appearance of the table.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Appearance of the table is but just an appearance. So the appearance of the table depends on what?
On its parts.
Exactly.
And
Oh,
the
good.
turntables.
But more importantly, we are looking at, right now we are trying to identify if it has any objective existence. So as such, we look at the collection of the parts of the table. When it appears, is the basis of negation.
That's the base of negation.
Yes?
Yeah. The base of negation is the collection of its parts.
Yes. So we think that the table truly exists in the collection of its parts.
Yeah.
That's not the case at all. When this is important to understand. When we say that the object of negation does not exist in the basis of negation at all.
The object of negation
Does not exist in the basis of negation at all. Because we might think that we are negating something that exists in the basis of negation. That's not the case at all. That's why we stressed before, from beginningless time, this essentially existent self of the person or the phenomena did not exist at all. So we use the example, like a flower on the table, it exists at one point, and then when you take it away, it doesn't exist. It's not like that. It never existed. So in this manner, we are trying to get at the extent of the conception of true existence.
This is gomosa. That pen and the Jusarashan, but the
Juicer.
Tangan to deal pen Hugo Dojil Peshavendra. Digal Tampo to Simatan and the Madonna Pendasma. Chetan Annie Penang to Hugo the Dulana, Dula Ra. You can answer Dula, Pijatangi Ra. You could see Napoli chicken to some Tani de Yubachi Ra. Tani Hugo di Pang and the Patas in Chenipa, Zagadona, Gore the Jury Tarepa, Peggy Ranting will put them to Pachi Dulana, Yomara. Ra. Tanganzo Kessi, Tanganzo you could dember to Zenti, Pagil Ranting and the Yubachin Zentavor. Ra. Kessi Ranting Le Yuna, Candes Yo Dul and Tajitanga. Ra. Tajitanga and Sukala Matogi, the chain that she yip the Kala Matogi, Pagi, such Yubachin on the nation Zemores. Tinder you knew your mother, Tawani. Ra. Teach not a person Kajan, the Josicala and in method of a Shatikidova Nashimanke. Could it till a dember to put the Union Korean? In a Kotani, the Orlan Yorda, Tanya the Yore, you go on to Pichet and you go Mindulan Digoma. You go the Yorde, Tigala Dember to put to New Yore, Tigala Dember to put near Jita, on to Toyajita, Toyaji, Yorelan Yomaris. Uno Digal and Demba Mepa Hanestolan, Tamboko Dember Tuna, the Neji too good, Susha, and it Tiba Me Papa.
So what we are trying to essentially understand is if there is a truly, let's use the example of a pen first. And then if we understand this, then we can move further along with the discussion. So when we look at this pen, we cannot begin to say that the pen doesn't exist because there is a pen which performs the function of writing and so forth. So as such, the functionality of pen is not being negated or refuted at this point. So we are first, when we say we need to recognize the extent of the conception of true existence or the object of negation, we are looking at if the pen truly exists, if the pen is truly established, if the pen is objectively established, if the pen is inherently existent, then we need to look at the manner in which it should exist. Yes? That's essentially what we are discussing now. So when we look at the manner in which an essentially existent pen, objectively existent pen should exist, then it should be findable along the collection of its parts, right? But without depending on the collection of its parts. Independent, yes, because it's essentially existent. So when you begin to look at that, this was never the case at all. From beginningless time, there wasn't a truly existent pen that is independent of its parts, independent of the collection of its parts, independent of the shape it projects, and so forth. So that is exactly what we are getting at. Are you okay with the fan?
Yeah, just change it. Yeah, sunny now. That is how goes
Now, are you able to get a little bit of the discussion so far? Yeah?
Yeah. No.
Well, yeah, just to make this, to see if I understand it correctly. So the concept of pen, did it exist in beginningless time actually? That's what we're trying to negate as well.
Not, yeah.
The concept of.
No, exactly. Now, when we think about the process of negation, it is important to understand that we are negating something that did not exist at all.
Yeah.
It's not something that existed at one point, and then now through the process of negation, it doesn't continue to exist after that.
I see. That's hard to understand because in the negation process, it feels like you're negating something.
Exactly. That's why, from the start, it is important to correctly identify the process of negation, the extent of the true conception of the self. So there are two sides to this. Okay, first, what is the process of negation exactly? So, from beginningless time, it didn't exist. That conception is being negated. Then, two, the object of negation. What exactly is being negated? These are two important things to establish before we can effectively carry the analysis of emptiness. Nida kechambu chagiyores. Gagjang unzin la dizamba khare tak kagdugiyore tombani gi cheba delara. Ti ngwezen chikche. Niba di ani gagja gag la dizamba kagbe rimba jora. Riba gi kagbe rimba jora. Ani di thagi nganzo isheba na shi kag la dizamba ngwen uyebe chalaji ani jedo meba chana ti kagda bo mares. Tengone du thomane ani mebe ani drota ju chalaji nganzo gi ngobola na da drota ju chi nganzo gi ani kagdu gyores. Dinyi thangbo ngoi mazuna ani tombani la cheba chele khabores.
Kora mijire denga temajista.
Terry.
Ra. Ta Terry le denga zo duela na tanda nganzo bed Terry kora mindula na digmara. Terry gala patse done ya gaja jingo sinya jira. Pena kora ani zuporimbo yore kaza fit kaza ni do. Ra. Ani kora tarimbo yore ani nganzo thonso mi yakpo yore nganzo keje shi tende laegi midu do. Tanda Thosamling la degi yore sanyi nani dogi yore. Tende laegi yore. Ani ko Thosamling la lere ta ko Thosamling nendoni digi tongpare la thumara. Ra. Hala Thosamling mebaji tsu yung ani par drowa tsu de tombani la layo mara kha tigana sunguda pena chozi de ani meto ro shani tiba kidrowa tsangi ani ko tombani shagi mares to gasha ra yebaji pakka deji mares ta tanda ko teri khora ngole ani chi juda chenda khala ya matuking ra khorang la ani degi demba tubachi yorela na yo mares chesang azo gta dende toni ko chapala ya ani kesi yona dende jiyores kesi teri yowaina ani phamala mateba jijela mateba ani chi khorang ta chi zubu chashi khala ya mateba ani teri dende jiyorela na yo mare kesi dende jiyoba chi khorang ngol chi tuba jani ti mindu samne ani phaka ra dende jireda
So maybe try to think about it in this manner, that when we say that there is Terry is here in Thosamling, then we say this on the basis of seeing a Terry who is 6'3", long hair, and such a person called Terry exists because we saw him in Thosamling and so forth. Now, try to think about it in this manner. When Terry actually leaves Thosamling, right? Then if we begin to say Terry is no longer in Thosamling, Terry does not exist, that's not the manner in which the analysis of emptiness works. That's not what we mean by emptiness at all. What we are saying is that there is, even wherever Terry goes, there is no such a thing called an objectively existent Terry. An objectively, not just objectively existent Terry, but inherently existent Terry, a Terry which exists independent of his parents, a Terry which is independent of causes and conditions, a Terry which is independent of the parts of his body. So such a Terry never existed. That's what we mean by object of negation. This year, now, so these two, the process of negation, how exactly is something being negated is important to understand. This negation itself, it's not the negation of something that was earlier existent, and then through the negation it becomes non-existent afterward. We are negating something that was non-existent from the start, but something we superimposed, conceptually created. And as such, we call this the innate conception of true existence, innate conception of self. So this is important. And then second, what exactly is this object of negation? This we already discussed now. It exactly is this innate conception of the self, this innate conception of the true existence. And now moving on, now it is important to reflect on the fact that since this itself is an ignorance, yes, because we create something that does not exist and as such hold it to be true. So we call this the ignorance of innate conception of true existence. Now from a Buddhist perspective, all other conceptions spring from this ignorance of innate conception of the self. Not just conceptions, but all our afflictions, all wrong consciousnesses, mistaken consciousnesses, afflictions, disturbed aspects of the mind spring from this ignorance of the innate conception of the self. Yes.
Understand?
Good.
Yeah.
Because you use me, so then I understand that.
Then meditate using yourself as an example. It will be helpful too. Everyone else is able to understand this and follow along with the discussions? Yeah? So, if there is anyone who didn't understand or were not able to follow along with the discussions, we will use your name as an example in the next discussion.
Teda ane nganzo ge thonsai ge ti medo do da de mi thong de de ta nyu ge pesha sa kesi nge de ba chi ma sha ne sha chala shen ba ji da ngara ge thong nyu ji chala sha na chunzo ge lo la sha ya mara me sha de ga la de ge pe khora ale lo la ma sha na ti ge thong to thu mara che sa su su le lu de ba sha na le la da ra ngara zo ge de na thong ya ji ge pe de sha na le tu su ne nge le la da ti ke ni sha re ma to mi shen ba ya mara.
But this is totally understandable. It is, of course, due to our self-grasping, easier to relate to ourselves all the time. So that's why when we use the example of a pen, flower on the table, maybe it's a little bit difficult to follow along. But when we use ourselves as an example, maybe it's easier to relate to and make sense of the discussions.
Penenge pe le thon de ngara chinju ga le thon de ge chemu tse ro ji chuzal pe sha de ne chemu tse ji do khora thon mi de ga tang bu dila ale phai de me ba to ya pha sha shi chemu tse ge shi de le thu de ngi da ra se sang ngara zo khai la ye khari na no so so ge pa ra pa do da ko de o se da an ti le thon ji ji pe sha na ya ngi da mon di chen sha re sra.
So, similarly, if I begin to explain all of this with the example of some toy that I played with in Tibet, then you wouldn't have ever seen this toy, so it wouldn't really make any sense for you. So it's important when we try to investigate, analyze these things, it's important to use a familiar example. It's practical to use an example that is familiar to you, something that you can relate to.
다딘디나 안에 다이가지 롱이 버더서자 되나 제 다디들아 안롱이 mambo시 손데 된더서임라
알레다 디나라 디직트 다가랑 갑도 말로샤나라. So I'll just read from here, and this I think is very, very important about understanding the object of negation. So because of this key point, without ascertaining, without identifying the object of negation, of which phenomena are empty, in other words, the measure of the establishment of the self, the measure or the extent of the conception of true existence, the meaning of emptiness will be nothingness. Without understanding, without identifying the object of negation, of which phenomena are empty, or in other words, without understanding the extent of the conception of true existence, then the meaning of emptiness will be nothingness. Understand it? Without understanding the measure of the establishment of the self. Now, first I will read it once again. Because of this key point, without identifying the object of negation, of which phenomena are empty. Now, forget about of which phenomena are empty. Now, because of this key point, without identifying the object of negation, in other words, the measure of establishment of the self, the extent of the conception of true self, the meaning of emptiness will then be nothingness. Without any sense of this exists, that does not exist. Yes? Nothing exists.
Yeah, or else we'll fall into nihilism.
Yes, exactly. And then you will begin to say that emptiness is nothingness, like an empty sky. You know?
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
When the innate concept of self dissolves, if you establish the object of negation well, it dissolves.
Not just, we are right now not talking about how to negate it. We are talking about identifying the object of negation first.
Okay, yeah.
Tanda ganzo dagzin thorla egeja shigyo mares, dagzin kagla egeja shigyo mares. Dagzin di gaja imbang ngwe zingyoris tanda.
Yeah, that I understand. But when we properly identify the object of negation, and then we see that it's superimposed, and then when you do the emptiness meditation on the self, it dissolves the
Imposed sense of self.
imposed sense of self. Then what's left there is like space. What is left there then?
Just appearances, no conception. So, okay, maybe try to think about it in this manner. Geshema will ask you this question. Is the innate conception of the self a wrong consciousness?
Yes.
Yes.
난데 로바레스. 다 로바이나 코 로반 젠지기 파게라 로반 젠세 유주라. 티 로바데 카레스 담보.
So then, if it is a wrong consciousness, then it conceives its objects wrongly. Yes? Then what is this object that it conceives wrongly?
What is this object? Sorry?
If it is a wrong consciousness, then it follows that it conceives its object, it apprehends its object wrongly, in a mistaken manner. Then what exactly is this object that it conceives mistakenly?
What is this object that
It conceives mistakenly.
it mistakes it as being independent from objective existence?
Huh?
It mistakes it. It is mistaken with the object perceiving as intrinsically real.
어때? nembar dubara, rangwena dubara, rangshingi dubala tagyores, yudi.
데데지 메바질에 거기 단지 되게 여반세라. 라 당아서 근데 단제데 penadadi page yudu tindo shana ra konzenji gi yudu yom ta kanda de shaya gor page ten gor yom ra tende ini ganzul denji do ala ra denji de lo pare ala lo ba ine ko yu me pachele yobaro ta suni ra odi dende sure la tiso ina odi khande kesiti yoba ina khande jo re la ta nang de shi do ra yun dende jo re ani di yom ra na pa ka ra ti pa ka ndi yusegi zensegi shidi pa ka ndi gala
So herein, what we are effectively doing is, when we say that it is a wrong consciousness, then it necessarily follows it is wrong with regards to the object it apprehends.
So with regards to appearance and apprehension?
Object, we are not talking about appearing object, no. We're talking about the object itself. Okay? So with regards to the object itself, it's mistaken. It's a wrong consciousness, because it's a wrong consciousness. Now, if it is a wrong consciousness, we establish that it is mistaken with regards to the manner in which it perceives, apprehends, conceives the object. Yes? So then as such, that object, right, is it existent or non-existent?
It's non-existent.
Exactly. See? Now, if we have to establish that it is non-existent, first we look at, okay, if it really is existent, then this is the manner in which it should exist. We are looking at that first, before negating it. Right? Because we have to carry this analysis to its extent, to its full extent. So as such, rather than immediately jumping to negate it, we make the logical accommodation to say that, okay, if this object does exist, then it should exist in this manner. And then when you begin to analyze that if it should exist in this manner, now we come back to reality itself. If it exists, if it does exist, it must exist in this manner. And then we begin to analyze, then it doesn't accord with reality. That's the manner in which the negation is carried.
We establish first how it exists, and then
how it should exist.
And then we can start the actual negation. How it does not exist.
Exactly. Because when we logically, rationally analyze the manner in which it should exist, then all evidence, proof, reasoning points toward the fact that it cannot exist in this way at all.
I understand.
Are you following along the discussions? Little bit.
Example of a human being, Human being is one with consciousness, wrong consciousness. I mean, it's better to explain this with an example in a human being, I think it's
this Geshema Minil Peshane Sunasra, Chigi ni Lolobayo, Danzi Lolobayo, Chigla Danzi Loloba Major Peshane Suna ni Yunguribes. So we'll stop here for now and
Yeah,